Babies and young children cry. They cry because it's their only way to communicate with you initially. They're not crying to annoy or manipulate you. And it's not necessarily our job to stop the tears or prevent them in the first place. Welcome to Mothering from Within, the podcast where we dive into the heart of parenting during those magical yet challenging first few years. I'm Kaili, a mama of two, a pediatric occupational therapist, and your guide on this beautiful journey of motherhood. Every week, we explore the wonders and hurdles of motherhood with curiosity, we gain clarity around our babies, and find the courage to trust our instincts. If you are a mama who wants to do motherhood your way, confidently, courageously, authentically, then you are in the right place. So grab a cup of tea, tuck those little ones in for a nap, or bring them along for the ride. It's time to get curious, gain clarity, and unleash your courage to do motherhood your way. A gentle disclaimer, please do not consider anything discussed on this podcast by myself or any guest of the podcast to be medical advice. The information is provided for educational purposes only and does not take the place of your own medical or healthcare provider. Today we're exploring a topic close to the heart of every parent, our baby's tears. Tears are triggering. Crying in particular can be triggering from both a sensory and auditory perspective, but it can also be a source of concern and sometimes frustration. I'll bet that when your child cries, you have a strong urge to stop those tears immediately, and this is totally normal. But crying is also a normal part of the human experience. Fact: babies and young children cry. They cry because it's their only way to communicate with you initially. They're not crying to annoy or manipulate you. And it's not necessarily our job to stop the tears or prevent them in the first place. Stay with me here. I am not telling you to leave your children to cry unsupported. But what if I told you that crying is not just a call for an immediate need or for comforting and soothing, but that crying is also a way to move through and past emotions such as anger, frustration, sadness, fear, and so much more. And crying can also be a key to unlocking past tension and helping our babies tell and move past their birth story. Now, this is a relatively new perspective for the general public, but there is more and more work and research being done in the pre- and perinatal psychology realm. And this work is really focused on the fact that babies can feel and have memories from their time in utero and during the birth process. While you listen to this episode, I want you to keep an open mind. Let's start with, why do babies cry? Of course, we all know that crying in babies is signaling a need. And when our babies cry, we instinctively run through the checklist, don't we? Are they tired, hungry, cold, hot, wet, dirty, bored, overstimulated, in pain, etc., etc.? We find out what our babies need, and when those needs are met, the crying stops. And your inner alarm system as an adult relaxes and all is good. Now, of course, if your baby has a present need and that is not met in a timely fashion, then your baby may start crying harder and sort of work themselves into something called self-activated crying. Babies can sometimes upset themselves with their own crying, and they can then become scared or mad and enter into this self-activated crying state that is even more intense than their needs crying. When this happens, usually your hungry baby will be too upset to eat, for example. But sometimes the crying doesn't stop. What about when your baby has had a full feed? They're dry, you're holding them, they just woke up from a nap, and they still have inconsolable crying, restlessness, colic, etc. In a previous episode, I talked about how birth is actually quite hard for babies, and really can be quite a stressful and painful process. Human beings are the only mammals who have to rotate their heads to squeeze through the birth canal. This, along with the pressure from the intense contractions, in addition to things like getting stuck or having external forces trying to help them out, such as vacuum, forceps, or even C-section, can all lead to body tightness and compression of the cranial or head bones. As they are born, babies' bodies may hold on to tensions and compressions, but also emotions and memory imprints of this journey. And crying can be a powerful means of processing, expressing, and releasing these memories. This type of crying is often called implicit memory crying, which is when the baby is experiencing sensations and images related to an earlier experience, for example, birth or their in utero life. This memory crying sounds different or more intense than a present needs cry, and often babies resist their parents' attempts to shush and calm them. This crying is usually associated with repetitive body movements, such as sort of frantically pushing or paddling their legs, swiping an area of the head or around the eye, pulling an ear over and over. With body language, facial expressions, and crying, babies are trying to tell you where they still have some difficulties because of what they have been through. Babies are aware and sensitive starting from the womb. There is plenty of research now showing that babies in utero share the same emotional experiences that their mother does, and this has the capacity to shape them. Any part of their prenatal or postnatal journey can impact and leave an imprint on a baby's system and become stored in the body. These body memories can be triggered by external stimuli, for example, a shirt being pulled over their head or being handled in a way that reminds them of their birth, or even through a bodywork session where a certain area is made contact with, and that is perhaps a little bit more sensitive. Maybe they were pushing through the birth canal and then all of a sudden they got overwhelmed by anesthetic coming in through the umbilical cord. Or maybe they are showing you where their head or cranium became compressed by mom's pelvic bone, or where their umbilical cord became tangled or knotted around their neck. Perhaps babies become exhausted and disoriented as they were traveling through the birth canal. Babies can have powerful human emotions such as rage, panic, sadness, and disorientation due to these various birth experiences. Can we picture for a moment how we feel as adults when our panic, rage, sadness, anger, etc. is silenced, shushed, we are told to stop, or to just pull it together? How would you feel? I want to read a little excerpt from Carlton Terry's book called New Parenting Can Change Your World to hone into this concept and to really help you visualize this. Carlton Terry is one of the world's leading baby therapists and instructors, and he has studied under pre- and perinatal pioneers, including William Emerson and Graham Ferrant, and he is a well-known pre- and perinatal workshop leader. Say you're a stay-at-home mom or dad and your partner has had a bad day. She twisted her ankle trying to rush onto the bus, problem number 1. Then at work, while multitasking, she spills coffee on her favorite white silk blouse, problem number 2. This makes her late for a meeting, problem number 3, and during that meeting, her firm's client decides to go with another firm, problem number 4. And she becomes the unofficial scapegoat for this loss because of her poor appearance and lateness, problem number 5. She's so upset that she can't hold down her lunch and vomits, problem number 6, before an afternoon of intense back-to-back meetings, problem number 7. By the end of the day, she has a terrible headache and realizes as she's heading for the bus that she left her bag in the office and has to go all the way back to retrieve it, problem number 8. So she misses that bus and has to wait another 15 minutes in the freezing rain. Problem 9. Getting off the bus. Because of her throbbing ankle and because it's so slippery, she falls from the last step to the sidewalk, landing on her hands, problem 10, and scraping her knees, problem 11. Scattering her bag's contents, problem 12. Finally, in tears, she walks through the front door. Do you, A, enthusiastically present a sandwich to her lips saying, shh, shh, honey, everything's okay? Or B, hold her and listen empathetically to every terrible detail of her day. As each detail is shared, she feels a little better. In this case, there were a dozen traumatic or trying experiences. After you have heard all she has to say, she will look at you gratefully, just like babies do when they have been thoroughly listened to. Then you can draw a bath for her and light some candles. What if we could have an open mind and wrap our heads around the idea that babies are humans just like you or I, and that they have similar needs and desires, similar emotions that go beyond their basic needs for survival? What if we could make sure our babies' needs are all met and then let our babies tell their story while we provided a nurturing presence and listened with empathy? What if we validated the emotions they were expressing and allowed them to also feel that sense of release that so many of us get as adults when we have a good cry or when we're fully listened to? Carlton Terry says that many sleep and feeding problems can often be traced back to earlier issues from in utero and birth experiences that have not been resolved. And he goes even further to say that colic might not just be due to digestive causes, but it is likely more to do with the residual effects from intense cranial impacts suffered during the birth. I want to take a moment and let you know about my book, Mothering from Within. Like a good friend, therapist, and mentor, this book offers guidance and support to help you navigate motherhood with intuition, grace, and yes, a bit of humor. It's full of evidence-informed, developmentally appropriate, attachment-focused information on developmental milestones, baby sleep, reflux, feeding, mama mental health, and so much more. To grab a copy, check out the link in the show notes below. Now that we've discussed why babies might cry, let's talk a little bit more about why we should let tears flow. Tears trigger something that's hardwired in us as parents, as adults, on a physiological level, but also on a deeper rooted emotional level based on our own life experiences. We all have an innate desire to respond to tears and even to prevent them, especially when it comes to our precious little babies. Crying and tears actually help to release cortisol, and we want this cortisol to be released so that it's not coursing through our bodies or our children's bodies, as this hormone can affect our well-being in so many different ways. We also release stress through screaming, raging, repeatedly talking about the hurt, through shaking, through laughing sometimes, perspiring, and even through yawning. Now, while crying is normal, crying unsupported and alone sends babies and young children into more of a fight or flight state in which cortisol is increased instead of being released. Even if you can't stop your little one's tears, for example, if they're in pain or they're in discomfort and you can't quote unquote fix that immediately, your support helps keep the cortisol levels low. Responding with loving attention and offering physical and or emotional support is really what counts. Sometimes this is easier said than done. Sometimes your child wants nothing to do with you when they're upset. For example, this can happen if your baby enters into more of that self-activated crying state, as I mentioned earlier. If they were hungry and signaled that need, but perhaps you didn't respond or figure out it was a hunger need in time, and they went from 0 to 60, often with the self-activated crying, regular soothing methods don't work. In this case, you can simply remain present, stay close by, and offer help when they're ready, so that they know they're not alone in their emotional distress. I do this with my children, currently 6 and 8 years old. When they're melting down and don't want to be held or hugged, I carry them to their room and I sit inside their room with them, with my back against the door, mainly so that they can't get out. I sit quietly, or sometimes I hum, and I let them do whatever it is that they need to do. Cry, scream, throw their toys, etc. Eventually, they come and sit in my lap and we have a big, long hug, and then we talk about what happened. By maintaining a soothing presence, we communicate to our babies that we're with them through their challenges. Just like I always talk about how we can't make our babies sleep, for example, we can provide a calming environment that is conducive to rest. It's the unspoken promise that we give to our children. This is tough, but I'm here with you, and together we'll get through the emotion, we'll find release, and we'll find calm. Okay, so hopefully you now understand why tears and crying is not necessarily a quote-unquote bad thing or something that we should be trying to stop right away. We also shouldn't be letting our babies cry in an effort to teach them independence or let them exercise their lungs or some other nonsense you read in a book or heard from a well-meaning mother-in-law or even your doctor. Crying is linked to emotions, and it's a way to express these emotions. So trying to stop or prevent tears sends a message that emotions associated with tears aren't okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't respond to your child's crying. Hug them and hold them, meet their needs, love them, and show them you'll always be there for them. What I'm encouraging you to do is to become comfortable with the tears. Allow them to flow while you meet your child's needs and while you support them through those emotions, through those tears. Babies feel silenced when memory crying is responded to as if it was a needs crying. As parents with a crying baby, we're often confused and we rush to fix the need, and we don't know how to respond. We try all the usual things to help soothe our babies and to meet their needs, but we're not comfortable with allowing the crying as a form of communication or a form of releasing this stress and trauma. We don't often consider that babies would have stress or trauma if they're well loved, well cared for, etc. Crying in its essence is not the enemy. It's a language, an emotional signal that sort of tells us to listen, learn, and empathize. As we learn to interpret this language, we actually can grow closer to our children, and they also then learn this valuable lesson that emotions are a natural part of life, and experiencing them fully is the first step toward emotional maturity. It's important to remember that in the earliest stages of life, the right kind of support during these bouts of crying can really lay the foundation for emotional regulation and resilience. When we respond to our babies with empathy and attention, we're not just comforting them in the moment. We're actually teaching them that they are heard, they're understood, and that their feelings are valid and matter. This is the kind of emotional scaffolding that builds a sense of security and trust, which are crucial for healthy emotional development. Tears are also going to be a regular part of parenting, well beyond the baby stage. Whenever you make a change, for example, not nursing at every wake at night, or you put a boundary in place, for example, no cookies for breakfast, or no screens before bed, or when your child doesn't get what they want, there is a very high likelihood that this will be met with tears, as well as anger, frustration, sadness, and all sorts of other emotions. Dr. Gordon Neufeld calls these tears of futility, which come when we set boundaries or change routines. You're changing a habit, something that's familiar and predictable. And now your baby or child is actually entering the unfamiliar and unknown, which is scary at first. Remaining consistent and supporting our children through the tears will be the best thing that you can do for them, and also for you. Our job as parents is not to stop the tears, but rather to support our children through the tears. It's through the tears that we can get to the other side, the release of the emotion, the release of stress. And then we have a better ability to find the calm and peace. And that's the same for our babies. So that begs the question, how can we get more comfortable with tears? Getting comfortable with tears starts with you as the parent. Consider why you might be getting triggered by tears in the first place. Let's get curious for a minute. I invite you to think about your relationship with your baby's crying. Ask yourself why these cries might be pressing all your buttons. How does their crying make you feel? Does it make you feel uncomfortable, maybe anxious, or even a bit frustrated? Or maybe it makes you angry. Do you feel like you need to stop the tears? Get curious and ask yourself why. How do you think this need to stop the tears affects your baby? Now, I want you to go a step deeper and a little further into the past. Reflect on your own childhood. How were you comforted? How were you allowed to express your emotions and your tears? Were you allowed to cry as a child? Or were you told not to cry? And how about now? Do you give yourself permission to cry, to feel, to release emotions? Or do you have all these uncried feelings and you're kind of stuffing the emotions down? And that is why you're getting activated or triggered when your baby cries. Really sit with these questions. Journal on them if that is your thing. Our own experiences with tears can deeply influence how we support our babies in their moments of need, distress, and communication. As parents, we can feel shame if we don't respond to our baby right away. You might have thoughts like, am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Am I not doing enough? This may come from societal expectations, from generational patterns and ideas that have been passed down to us. And we often get triggered because of our own unexpressed tears. And this is often why we want to make our baby's tears stop right away. So what can we do as parents? Step 1 is determine the nature of the cry. Is it a needs cry? If it is, then meet the need. Some babies have different cries for different needs, but some babies have a cry that just sounds the same for each need. Every baby is going to be different, so you're going to have to really tune into your baby. What is most important is that you listen to them, and listen to them without getting aroused yourself, so without getting kind of dysregulated, without that inner urgency to fix or anxiety, so that you can try to determine the meaning of the cry. If it is a need, when you meet the need, the crying should stop. On the other hand, if your baby continues to cry and you have met all their needs, then you can think of this as a memory cry. Memory crying comes from the core or the gut of the baby, and the baby's face often looks like it's in pain. The way to help your babies when they are memory crying is to do the same thing you would for an adult. So just like I read that story and what you would like, listen patiently, track the details and the tones in their voice, mirror them, validate, empathize with them. Something like, "Oh, honey, you sound so angry or scared right now." Let them tell their story for as long as they want and as many times as they want. Now, you might have memories surface from your own labor and delivery experience. You might start crying too, and that's okay. Go ahead and cry. Let the tears flow. Release the stress and the trauma. Get past those emotions that you're currently blocking. If you find yourself getting tense or your inner sort of rescue program is going off the charts when your baby is crying, try pausing and taking a breath. Relax your body, quiet your mind, and listen. Really listen. Your baby is communicating in the purest form, telling you their story through their tears. And you, amazing parents, are there to hear it, to comfort, to connect. There are many practitioners who specifically work with babies, families, and this implicit memory crying. So if you think your baby is memory crying a lot, it might be worth investigating this further to get professional support. As we become more comfortable with tears, both theirs and our own, we create a family culture where emotions are honored and expressed freely. As parents, we need to realize that our aim is not to always stop the crying. Our aim is to be present and empathic with our children during them. By getting curious, we become detectives of our baby's inner world, attuned to the subtleties of their unique emotional language. Acknowledging crying as a form of communication shifts our role as parents as well. We become listeners and soothers and responders rather than fixers or silencers. In doing so, we actually give our babies the most profound gift, the permission to be human, to be vulnerable, and to grow from that. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to take away this thought. Each tear, each cry is a form of communication, a peek into your baby's emotions and experiences. Learn to listen, not just with your ears, but also with your heart. Until next time, stay kind to yourself, be gentle with your little ones, and keep trusting in the journey of motherhood. You're doing amazing. Thanks for joining us today on Mothering from Within. If today's chat sparked something inside of you to explore your motherhood journey deeper, the Mothering from Within Collective is waiting with open arms. This program offers an intimate, high-touch coaching journey designed to empower you with the confidence and clarity to embrace motherhood on your terms, free from guilt. Get curious about your parenting values, gain clarity on your baby's sleep, development, and more. With comprehensive courses, one-to-one support, group Q&As, and a nurturing community. This is your invitation to join a community of mamas doing it all their own way. Supported, seen, and held. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more about the collective and how we can walk this beautiful path together. Until next time, stay curious, embrace clarity, and let your courage shine.